Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group. We're located in the always beautiful and sunny, a little overcast today, Scottsdale, Arizona. And we've got a lot of business to attend to. As usual, we're going to go over to our mind map to get our bearings straight. You can see the title of the program today is Burdens. We're talking about all sorts of different interpretations of burdens, burdens of proof, burdens on communities, and burdens on the Justice Department to be open and transparent. And we're going to start by going through Donald Trump. Of course, we spent a lot of time yesterday unpacking the appeal that was submitted by government prosecutors up to the 11th Circuit. And we're going to take a look at the court docket over there at the 11th Circuit. And Donald Trump and his defense lawyers, what is going on here? Donald Trump and his defense lawyers filed their responses today. And so we'll take a look at those. They're actually quite hefty. We've got about 30 pages of Trump's response to look at. We also have about another 30 pages or so that have been submitted by Republican attorneys generals. These are different states that are submitting an amicus brief saying that they are supporting Donald Trump and the appointment of the special master, right? In other words, they are trying to, I guess, buttress Trump. And so we'll see if there's other AGs who respond opposing Trump later. We've got clips from Alina Habba talking about Donald Trump and those tapes, releasing those tapes, and a statement from Donald Trump himself about those surveillance FBI video footage that they had said they recorded during the raid at Mar-a-Lago. So they've got some updates for us on that. And we'll spend a lot of time on this first segment because there is some heavy lifting to get through. But then we're going to jump into the latest at the border. The Border Patrol released new numbers today. We've got over 2 million encounters now this year, 1 year, not like in the last, like not in the Biden administration, meaning this year is what we're talking about. And all sorts of reports from Bill Melugin over there at Fox News. We're going to take a look at state populations and how all this intermingles itself. We've got crazy sheriffs out there from Bexar County, Texas, who want to prosecute Ron DeSantis now, making it two of the top Republican contenders for the next presidential election that are now being prosecuted by the Democrats, right, in America. So two very, very important political opponents coming under criminal investigation. Amazing job. Leader McConnell had something to say about it, which is fun. Normally he's sort of just asleep somewhere. But Leader McConnell came out talking about immigration. We've got several clips from Karine Jean-Pierre, along with this White House guy named Gene Sperling, who had something to say about immigration. And Trump actually is using some old language back from his 2016 campaign, sort of using some of that same language that he was using back then, he's using now. So we'll check in on that. And then lastly, in our final segment, there's some interesting news. Representative Jim Jordan, Republican, he sent a letter over to the FBI, and he has some serious concerns about that agency. Obviously, so does the rest of the country. But Jim Jordan was on Tucker, and he communicated that there was a whistleblower who was revealing all sorts of malfeasance within the FBI who just got suspended. And so Jim Jordan sent a letter over to the FBI, and he also wants a copy of the Trump affidavit, unredacted and released in full. And so we've got several clips from him as well. And so as you can see, my friends, boy, oh boy, do we just have a lot to get to today. And if you want to be a part of the program, the best place to do that is over there at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. They are chatting away. We've got an amazing community. We post morning videos, walk and talks where we talk politics, say hello and good morning to everybody on our locals community. But Knowledge Tree's over there, C. Reed, Jumpin' Jeff, Matt's mom, shout out to Matt's mom, along with Savvy Sue, Sugar Britches, Knowledge Tree, Gregory's in the house. Gregory and others sharing pictures and some good photos over there. Shout out to our friends over on Rumble who are also chatting. Anything's in the house. Vienti Kisses over there, modding down the fort. We got Sarge Parkey along with CK Platform, Larry 1, Rody 66 over there, JHT3. I got an interesting email from Rumble today. They sent me an email and they said, why don't we connect you with somebody to talk about business development? And I said, oh, well, that's interesting. I like business and I like development. So that's interesting, right? They're sort of reaching out to people and connecting. So shout out to our friends over on Rumble. And of course, you can also join on YouTube. You can click that join button right next to the subscribe button. Get the same benefits of the morning walk and talk. Get those Binger and Hunter Biden gifts along with some of the others. We've got some members in the house. Shout out to Betrayed by Corrupt Scumbags in the house, along with Bear Ashby. Joe Wallish is here. Shout out to Betrayed by Corrupt Scumbags. Absolutely amazing. T-Rex is here. Says, Rob makes me grin. You make me grin, T-Rex. Look at this little smirk on my face. Shout out to John McGarvey and Elaine Smith and other members on YouTube. I also am a criminal defense lawyer over at the R&R Law Group. We are a criminal defense law firm located in Arizona, and we help anybody who is in Arizona, whether you're a citizen or you're just passing through. If you've been charged with a crime, even if it's a small traffic infraction or something more serious, we can certainly help with that. We offer free case evaluations. We have a mission to help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but also in their lives. 480-787-0394. Or schedule online at rrlawaz.com. And I mentioned this yesterday, but we've got a very special birthday in the house. And we're going to say a happy birthday to my brother, Jojo. Joey G, the number one brother, is in the house. And so it's going to be a happy birthday to Joey. He stopped by and he recorded a little bit for us. And so we're going to save that at the end of the program. He's going to give us an update on the Avengers. The Avengers, of course, very, very important news, and so you're not going to want to miss any of that. So we'll get to those later. We'll hear from Jojo when he comes on by the show later tonight. But my friends, let's get this queued up. And so we got some serious business to attend to. We've got a whole set of appeals that we've got to read through. And so let's get right into it, shall we? Donald Trump and his defense team respond to the government prosecutors. Remember that they filed an appeal up to the 11th Circuit. They said, we don't want this special master involved. We don't want any oversight over these cases. We just kind of want to do our own thing. We're the DOJ. We're the FBI. We know everything and we have everything under control. Well, Judge Eileen Cannon said, no, that's not the actual truth. And so when she appointed the special master, the prosecutors, the DOJ, they said, well, we're taking this up on appeal. We're going to go right to the 11th Circuit, and they did. This is what the docket looks like from the Court of Appeals over at the 11th Circuit. You can see several things filed very recently. Down here at the bottom, you'll see several updates from 9/20, and I will remove myself from the stream. But here you see there were addendums filed. There was a brief filed at the appellee, Donald Trump. And you also have an amicus brief that was filed by a bunch of different states: Texas, Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Louisiana, South Carolina, Utah, West Virginia. Shout out to those states, all filing on behalf of Donald Trump. So this is what the Court of Appeals docket looks like. And there are several things that we will unpack. The first and most important, of course, is going to be Donald Trump's appeal. Trump responds to the government prosecutor saying, it's not my burden. We don't have to prove our innocence. You have to prove our guilt. And he submitted this motion, this actual response to the government's appeal, and you see it listed here, the response to the government's motion for a partial stay pending appeal. This motion and this response drafted by Christopher Kesey, Trump's newest lawyer. It is 40 pages filed in the 11th Circuit. Donald Trump versus the United States of America on appeal out from the Southern District of Florida, where Judge Eileen Cannon issued the original order on the special master. Also drafted by James Trusty, Trump's other defense attorney. One of them. And as usual, they notify all of the interested parties in the case. And so we saw something very similar from the prosecutor's motion, making sure that all of the interested parties, including all of the media people, including people like the special master himself, are notified over what's going on. And many people in the media came crashing into this case. They were all sort of, they all want notice about what's happening. And so they're all being notified here. So we'll fast forward through all of that. You see the certificate is signed. Now we get to the table of contents. Here, they're going to lay out some of the arguments briefly, and we'll fly through that. We also have the table of authorities, which is where they list the cases that they're referencing, along with the statutes, all of the authorities and the rules from the federal rules. But here is the summary of the argument. Trump's defense lawyers write on appeal, responding to the prosecutors. They say the following. They write investigation of the 45th president of the United States is both unprecedented and misguided. In what at its core is a document storage dispute, or as we've called here, overdue library book problem, that has spiraled out of control, the government wrongfully seeks to criminalize the possession by the 45th president of his own presidential and personal records. And this was that key area of dispute that we really focused on yesterday. The government basically wrote this exact sentence in reverse. They said, why are we even here? Why are we even fighting about classified documents? They're our documents. They're ours. So we shouldn't even have a special master, or shouldn't even be debating these things. And Trump said, no. They are my documents. That's why you shouldn't have taken them in the first place. And the government wants you to presuppose the conclusion that hasn't been litigated yet. So Trump's defense, they say, 11th Circuit, they say, judges, recognizing the extraordinary circumstances presented by this case, the district judge, Judge Eileen Cannon, determined that the appointment of a special master was fully consonant with public interest and the principles of equity. Say the lower judge already considered all of this. It's unprecedented. This is crazy. They raided a former president. All of this was justified. Now, having failed to convince the district court to impose its stay after Judge Eileen Cannon granted the special master, government prosecutors said, Judge, if you do this, we're going to have these 100 classified documents that are going to be taken by the special master who you just appointed, and we're all going to die because of this seizure of the documents. Our investigation is not going to be able to continue to go on, and it's going to be the end of it. And so they said, please stay the special master. Just stop it for a minute. And they're saying that failed. The judge said, no, I'm not staying it. And they said, well, that's just ridiculous. We're going to your manager. We'd like to see your manager. And they took it up to the 11th Circuit. And so they're explaining that to the judge. They're saying, Judge, now, after all that happened, the government now asks this court, you, to presuppose the content, designation, and the associated interest in materials under its control. So they're asking you, Judge, 11th Circuit, all of you, to just go ahead and just decide that these are categorized or designated accordingly. And that's not been litigated. And they say they want you, 11th Circuit, to preclude any review by somebody who is a highly regarded and jointly recommended special master of what the government unilaterally contends are classified records. Saying we actually agreed to the special master, by the way. Trump proposed 2 people. The government proposed 2 people. Trump objected to both the government's proposals, and the government only objected to one of Trump's proposals. That means that Raymond J. Deary, the actual special master, was agreed upon by this government. And now they're saying, oh gosh, he can't see these documents because of this exigency, because of this urgency. They're telling you this, 11th Circuit? They say, look, okay, ridiculous. This court should respectfully decline the government's invitation to proceed directly towards a preordained conclusion. See that? A preordained conclusion, right? They're saying, hey, 11th Circuit, they're asking you to just presume an outcome that they want that hasn't been shown. And respectfully, we're asking you to decline that invitation. Now they write, the lower level court, Judge Eileen Cannon, she did not err in temporarily enjoining the government's review and the use of the records with those classification markings on it. Remember, Judge Eileen Cannon said that they can't use those 100 documents for criminal purposes. And that was a narrowly tailored injunction where she sort of carved out an exception for the defense confidentiality review being conducted by the ODNI, the Director of National Intelligence. And so they write, she had authority to do that, and it was justified. They say, moreover, the 11th Circuit should deny the government's request, also preventing the disclosure of the classified records over to the special master. They say, well, that order is just not appealable. All right, so this is going to be sort of a technical argument, I'm sure, where they just say that's outside of the jurisdiction of an appeal, and you should just toss it on that basis. Paragraph 2. This is Trump's defense team arguing in front of the 11th Circuit they're giving the court some factual background and history. They say, all right, 11th Circuit, here's what you need to know. On August 8th, the government raided Trump's house, dozens of federal agents seized a multitude of records and other property, including personal materials and purported, quote, they write in quotes, classified records. Oh, yeah. Immediately after the search, Trump's lawyers asked the government for a copy of the affidavit in support of the warrant. The government's consent to appoint a special master to protect the integrity of the documents, a detailed list of what was taken, and an opportunity to inspect the seized documents was all ordered, or was all requested, right? Those all things were demanded by Trump's lawyers, and the government declined those requests. So Trump's lawyers, they're raiding the residence. They say, all right, well, we've got attorney-client privilege in there. Can you maybe give us those? Can you tell us what you took from us? Can you give us the affidavit? No, no, no. To safeguard his interest in the seized materials, Trump's team says, Trump filed this civil action, asking that the district court appoint a special master, a third party, to review the documents that the government took because we don't trust the DOJ or the FBI. The lower court temporarily stopped the government from the use of the materials for criminal purposes pending a review of the special master request. However, the district court explicitly, right, carved out this exception for intelligence classification and national security assessments. So where the government is sort of having a difficult time here is they're saying, we need these documents immediately because we have very important business to do, whatever that happens to be. And one of those sort of things is, of course, national security. And the court said, okay, well, that's okay. No problem at all. You can use the documents for national security. It's a carve out for those. And they said, well, that means that we can't criminally prosecute him. And that's what we really want. We don't really care about national security because all this is just made up. But what we really want, thinking as a prosecutor here, put the prosecutor hat on, what we really want is a criminal prosecution of Donald Trump. And so what argument can we come up with to respond to this? They say, oh, gosh, you know what? Thanks, Judge, for carving out that defense component. But the problem at the FBI is we have a difficult time doing things with intelligence, and we can't separate the intelligence component of this from the criminal component. We can't unmingle the two. And so they say we just can't do it. And so we have to get those documents for those criminal purposes. We can't just only review them for national security purposes. We've also got to do them commingled. Why? Because they only want one outcome here. So they're explaining that and explaining that all of this got carved out. And Trump's defense, they say, after all of this was hashed out, the judge appointed Raymond J. Deary, somebody with a lot of experience, to serve as special master. He worked on FISA courts, and the district court and the order that appointed the special master authorized Judge Deary to review all of the seized materials, verify that the materials represent a full and accurate extent of the property that was seized, allocate those materials to one of four categories agreed to by the government, and then adjudicate the disputes between the parties. We talked a lot about the spreadsheets that they make. Somebody goes and catalogs one set of documents. They put them in a spreadsheet. They send them over to Trump's team. He looks at them and they send them back. And they categorize them accordingly. The order from the lower court laid out precise procedural steps and deadlines to ensure that the special master review and all of the litigation is done before the end of November. Not before the midterms. If you're the FBI and the DOJ, if you're Merrick Garland, you go, darn it. We were close. But by the end of November, that's after the midterms. Trump's team, they say, in the lower level court, 11th Circuit, the government sought a stay of the order to the extent that the government was not allowed to use this stuff for criminal purposes, and that the government was required to disclose the classified records to a special master. And we made a big deal about this. The government really, really does not want those 100 documents going over to the special master. They said, give him the 11,000, the 10,900 other documents. He can have those all day. He can put them in his closet. He can wear Melania's brassieres. We don't care about those. We only care about the 100 classified documents. And they were sort of twisting themselves into pretzels to try to stop that from going over to the special master. And they were so concerned about this that they didn't even appeal the entire special master order, right? They didn't care about those, like I said, those 10,900 documents, the almost 11,000 that were not problematic. They only appealed this issue, those 100 documents. So it's almost like they're like, okay, look, we're going to lose this whole war, so we just have to win this one battle, and that's good enough. All the eggs in this one basket. Don't lose the 100 documents. Trump's team, they say, the district court denied the government's stay request, saying, we're not inclined to hastily adopt the government's contention that the 100 documents were in fact classified, as you say, and that President Trump could not have a possessory interest in any of them. Right? So the judge is saying, you say they're classified. Trump says they're not. Why am I listening to you, government? You say that they're your records. Trump says they're his records. Why should we just default with you? Because you're the DOJ? No. How about no? We still have the presumption of innocence, which resides with the defendant. And we also have the burden of proof, which resides with the government. And they're trying to flip both of those. Judge Eileen Cannon didn't let that stand. The district court, Judge Cannon, further concluded that a neutral third party, in this case, a senior U.S. district court judge with FISA court experience dealing with the most sensitive national security matters, was best suited to conduct an initial review of the documents. And to address the government's concerns, the district court directed the special master to even prioritize those classified documents. Right? Saying, yes, he is going to get a handle on those. That box of those 100 documents, they're going over to Raymond. And he's going to go through those as quickly as possible, since DOJ, you're melting down day after day about national security implications. As it did below, Trump's team says, the government seeks a stay of the order as to those two issues. They don't want the special master to review those documents. The government wants to limit the scope of any review of its investigative conduct, and it wants you to presuppose the outcome, at least as to what it deems are, quote, classified records, right? They're saying these documents belong in this bucket. Judge, don't even think about how to categorize them. We've already made that decision for you, and Trump doesn't have any standing, essentially, to claim otherwise. They say the district court's order, Judge Cannon's order, are a sensible preliminary step towards restoring order from chaos, and this court should deny the government's motion. Okay, this is up on appeal to the 11th Circuit. Now, they're going to go through and they're going to tell us some standards of appeal, and appeals are very heavy in case law, so let's just take a look. As you can see, anytime you see these italicized fonts and these strings of numbers, these are just citations from case law. And these are all going to lay out the rules here. And so you've seen that there. And they summarize that here. Once those rules have been laid out, they pulled them from the cases. They say the government, because they moved on appeal, they've got to accomplish a couple things. One, that they're going to win on the appeal, obviously, right? Like they have to win if they're going to get relief. That absent a stay, the government would suffer irreparable damage. Okay, if the special master does get his hands on these documents, that they're going to suffer something. That Trump will suffer no harm from the issuance of the stay, and that the public interest will be served by the issuing of the stay. The court reviews these factors, they say, is not de novo, right? Meaning that the court of appeals doesn't get to go through those four factors independently of its own volition. They have to interpret it from what happened at the lower level court. So here's how that sounds legally. To prevail, it must show that the lower level court judge, Eileen Cannon, that her decision to appoint the special master and to not issue the stay was clearly erroneous, which is a higher standard, right? So the decision has already been made. There's a precedent that's been established by Judge Eileen Cannon. And so if the 11th Circuit is going to overrule her, it has to be, according to the case law, clearly erroneous. And the government can only prevail on its motion if it shows that the balance of the equities heavily weigh in favor of granting the stay. Okay, so this sounds like it's kind of a big order. Like it's like a tall thing for this government to do in order to succeed. Because as we read through in Judge Cannon's original order, I think there's all sorts of bases for her to grant a special master. And it's just a special master. It's just a referee. She didn't decide this case. She didn't say Donald Trump is innocent. She just said, oh, yeah, there's a little bit of fishy business going on here. You know, there's leaks over from the DOJ to the Washington Post and elsewhere. And you did seize privileged documents, and you did seize other materials that were personal in nature, and there were all sorts of problems. So how about we put a referee in there? Everybody else melts down. Oh my gosh, we're all going to die. So they go through, and you can see we're talking about the standard of the review. A lot of legalese and heavy lifting here. Lots of case law. Reynolds versus McInnes. Grilly versus Metro Life, and so on. So we'll just fast forward through that. Then we get to paragraph 4. The argument, subsection A. They tell us Trump's defense says the district court properly stopped the government from reviewing and using the records for criminal purposes. That when the judge ordered the special master appointed and the special master said, stop rummaging through those boxes, that was legitimate. Trump's defense says the seizure records from President Trump's home presents extraordinary circumstances that warrants review by a neutral third party. Eileen's injunction preserved without objection the government's ability to review and use the materials for intelligence and national security purposes. And so the motion demonstrates that the government has misinterpreted the order as a prohibition on conducting a national security assessment. And I understand what they're doing here in this motion, in this response. I don't think that the government misinterpreted anything, right? They are interpreting it in a way that's most favorable to them, but they're being a little bit facetious here. Well, the government can't be so stupid and wrong, right? Which means that they must have just misinterpreted the order. Because if they had properly read the order, they would know that Judge Eileen Cannon carved out a national security assessment provision directly in the order. And they say, as noted previously, footnote 4, President Trump does not oppose any action advancing the legitimate national security interest of the United States. Trump doesn't want to hurt the country. Trump's not selling nuclear codes over to Kim Jong-un. He just wants this to go according to the law and have due process and follow established precedent in American history. But apparently that's not doable under this current administration, so long as he remains a viable political opponent. Trump's lawyers, they say, the prosecutors also argue incorrectly that Trump cannot have a possessory interest in documents with classification markings. Right? They're saying just the mere fact that they put a sticker on it that says, we're classified, hi, my name is classified. If they put it on the document, it's the government's document. That's just their rules, they say. And Trump had documents with the sticker on it, therefore it's theirs. And that's why the government says we're going to win, because that's the rule. But Trump's lawyers, they say, this stupid argument, number one, it misconstrues the standing requirement under the rules. And number two, without either side presenting any proof whatsoever, they're assuming that the documents, in fact, are classified, okay, without any evidence. Like, that's what we're arguing about. And number three, it ignores that President Trump does have a cognizable interest in his own records, irrespective of the classification markings. Right? There's all sorts of other layers of statutes that apply, including the Presidential Records Act, which distinguishes between presidential records and personal records. So subsection 1, they tell us that the government is just misreading the rules. They just don't even know what Rule 41G even means. They say the material seized from Trump's home includes not only personal effects without evidentiary value, but also approximately 500 pages of material that is likely subject to attorney-client privilege, as well as medical documents and tax and accounting information. Those sons of bees. Unbelievable. In addition to these so-called confidential documents, 500 pages of material: attorney-client privilege, medical documents, tax and accounting information as well. They were just gobbling everything up. Because remember, the original search warrant that was issued by Judge Reinert said that they could take anything, basically, whatever they wanted. If they walked into your desk and they opened up a drawer and they said, uh-oh, there's one of our classified stickers on there. Uh-oh. They could take the whole drawer. They could take the drawer above it, the drawer below it, the drawers to the side of it. If it was in a closet, every other box in the stinking closet. Because they had all the power granted by Judge Reinert. So they took it all. Medical documents, accounting information, the whole thing. They say, as Judge Eileen Cannon noted, that to satisfy the standing requirements under the rules, the claimant, here meaning only Trump, only need to show that there's a colorable ownership, possessory, or security interest in at least a portion of the seized property. This comes from an 11th Circuit case in 2010. Okay, the fact that they took Donald Trump's passports, the fact that they took all of those other things that, according to Trump's team, were 500 pages worth of materials, which is almost, it's almost half the documents, right, are in that category. Saying that if even a sliver of that is Trump's, he's got standing to make a claim. Standing to make a claim. They're saying he has no basis because he doesn't have any ownership. They took some property that he clearly has ownership in. Trump's lawyers write, since Trump has satisfied this initial threshold, meaning he does have a possessory interest, a property ownership interest, they say that determining whether some of the listed property does not in fact belong to Trump is a matter better dealt with on summary judgment or at trial. Okay? Talking about two different things happening. What's the threshold to get a lawsuit, to get a civil complaint in the door? You got to have some standing. Standing is enough to say that some property that was seized, you've got a possessory interest in. All right, some of Trump's stuff was his unequivocally. Government has even admitted that. That means he's got standing to get past this next issue. And standing was a big complaint that the prosecutors had. They said, Judge, you can't appoint a special master. You've got no jurisdiction over this case because he has no possessory interest in the property. And they're saying, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be all of the property. Even if a sliver is enough, that gives him standing to get there. And if you want to fight about the other classifications about presidential records or classified or not, do it at trial. Do it at summary judgment, which is what the special master is there to facilitate. Trump's lawyers, they say, noting that disputes as to the proper designation of the materials and the legal implications flowing from those designations, the court did not err, either clearly or otherwise, by saying that we're not going to conduct a piecemeal analysis of the subset of the property. Saying that, look, the judge appointed a special master. That's perfectly acceptable way to handle all of this stuff. And that's not clearly erroneous. So the threshold for the government to be successful on their appeal and to get the stay to stop them from having to give the special master those 100 documents is not going to be met. Subsection 2. The government has not proven the documents are classified. They're saying the government, again, presupposes that the documents it claims that are classified are, in fact, classified and that their segregation is inviolable. But the government has not proven this critical fact. The president has broad authority governing declassification and access to classified documents. Take a look at a Supreme Court case from 1988 called Egan. Congress, in that case and priors, provided certain parameters for controlling classified information, but primarily delegated to the president on how to regulate that information. Take a look at the U.S. Code. At the same time, Congress exempted the president from complying with such requirements because, after all, he is the president. President Obama, they write, enacted the current executive order prescribing the parameters for controlling this information, and he did that back in 2009. In that executive order, which controlled during Trump's term in office, they say that designates the president as the original classification authority. Take a look at section 1.3A1. That grants authority to declassify information to either the official who originally classified the information or that individual's supervisors, necessarily including the president. Take a look at 3.1B1 subsection 3. Thus, assuming that that executive order could even apply to constrain a president, Trump's lawyers, they say, the president has absolute authority to declassify any information. They say, yeah, basically they're saying that that executive order could even apply to constrain a president, right? What they're saying is here it would be insane to think that Obama could pass an executive order that would constrain a subsequent president, right? Because that would be nuts. Because a president has the same power as another president, right? They're all equal in terms of power there. And if one president can sort of handcuff a subsequent president, that makes that second president less powerful than the first president. So we've got to be very careful here, the court is saying, when there is an understanding that the executive order issued by Obama can extend over to Trump to constrain him, but it is in power, right? It is in charge. And so even at that even if we accepted that it was legitimate and powerful, that it grants the president specifically the authority to declassify the information. Trump's lawyers, they say, there is no legitimate contention that the president's declassification of documents requires approval from the bureaucratic components of the executive branch. Don't tell us that Trump has to go through some form on some librarian's desk in order to get these things done. He's the president, she's not. Yet the government apparently contends that President Trump, who had full authority to declassify documents, quote, willfully retained classified information in violation of the law, saying the government seeks to preclude any opportunity for consideration of this issue. They are presupposing the outcome. They are just presuming what they want. Footnote 5 says, the fact that the documents contain classification markings does not necessarily negate privilege claims. For example, the partially unredacted search warrant affidavit states that certain documents with classification markings allegedly contain to be what appear to be Trump's handwritten notes. Oh. Those notes could certainly contain privileged information, further supporting the need for an independent third-party review of the documents. Right? And you've got layers now. Several different layers that apply. On one layer, you've got the classification confidentiality issues that Trump and his defense say is debatable. But you've also got these privilege issues. If Trump would have added his notes onto a classification document, now you've got to consider privilege on top of the classification issue, right? So multiple layers. Trump's lawyers, they say, the PRA distinguishes, and the PRA is the Presidential Records Act, says that presidential records are different from personal records, and that all materials that are produced or received by the president, to the extent practicable, be categorized as presidential or personal records upon their creation or receipt and be filed separately. Judicial Watch here is the case where this comes from, and we read through that one. This is the Clinton sock drawer case from the D.C. Circuit Court in 2012, saying that there are two buckets. When the president is interfacing with different materials, it's either a presidential record or a personal record. And it's best to see if we can label them when they come in. Like when the mail comes in, sort it right now, because otherwise it's going to be a mess later. Now, the categorization of the records during the presidency, they say, controls what happens next. And the statute that was codified by Congress assigns the archivist, which is the head librarian of America, in this case it's Deborah Steidelwall, it assigns the archivist no role with respect to personal records once the presidency concludes. This is why Judge Amy Berman said that Judicial Watch could not get President Clinton's hours of recordings that covered all sorts of presidential activity that were clearly not personal. They said you can't get those because he categorized those as personal records. The PRA contains no provision obligating, or even permitting the head librarian to assume control over the records that the president categorized and filed separately as personal records. There's just no jurisdiction, no authority. At the conclusion of the president's term, the head librarian assumes only responsibility for the presidential records. And if there are issues, it's discretionary for the archivist to classify records. But if there's any questions about this, the responsibility, look here, is left solely to the president. This is describing the categorization decision that was made by President Clinton that were not subject to the archivist. So, Trump's defense says, judges, all of the records that the government has brought to your attention here, they fall into two categories. One, either presidential records governed exclusively by the Presidential Records Act, or personal records determined by Trump's discretion. He gets to decide where they fall. He is, after all, the president. Now, they say, to the extent that the seized materials constitute presidential records, a former president has unfettered right of access to the presidential records, even though he may not own them, right? So Trump, even if they are categorized as presidential records, he's got a right of access to them. Moreover, under the Presidential Records Act, Trump has specified rights to restrict access to his presidential records. Subsection 4, and we're getting closer to the end here, says that the district court correctly found, meaning Judge Eileen Cannon, that the irreparable harm to the government was insufficient to warrant a stay. And remember, the government came out and they were screaming from the rooftops, Judge, if you give this special master those 100 documents and you delay our investigation, we're all going to die. The government said, we're going to be irreparably harmed if we cannot continue our criminal investigation if we have to disclose highly sensitive materials to the special master. But Trump's lawyers say, Judge, the government, they cannot demonstrate that a short pause of the criminal investigations, that it harms national security. There's no serious argument here, right, that says that allowing Judge Raymond Dearie to review the documents inflicts harm. He's just going to look at them. He's a special master. He's a judge. He's looked at tons of documents like this. It's not going to hurt anything if he just looks at it and we just slow down. I mean, after all, these documents were in Trump's residence for how long? Almost 2 years? But the government argues that because the FBI has, quote, integrated intelligence and law enforcement functions, remember that argument? Oh, we can't separate the two. No. We can't do a national security assessment separately from our criminal investigation. We can't bifurcate these two issues, saying one cannot be done without the other. But as Judge Cannon noted, these arguments simply show that it would be easier to allow the government to conduct its criminal investigation and national security assessment together. It would just be easier, but it's not going to cause harm. We got that declaration from Alan Kohler, I think, at the National Security Counter whatever of, intelligence. They're saying that this is going to be a real difficult burden for us to separate our teams out. Okay, well, it's going to be maybe a little more difficult for you, but it's not harm, right? We have other interests at play. So sorry that you have to complete multiple spreadsheets, but you got to do it. Trump's defense, they also say, the government continues to advance hypothetical situations to demonstrate this, quote, hypothetical irreparable injury. Judge Cannon already explained that these hypothetical scenarios and general explanations do not establish irreparable injury, and there's case law to show it. In the state of Florida, the government has not shown how the findings are erroneous and not detailing any irreparable harm. It says it's trying to shift the focus to past events, saying that the materials were stored in an unsecure manner in their motion. And again, like nobody cares about that. The materials being stored in an unsecure manner, that's not the point of this appeal. We're not talking about Trump's innocence or guilt. We're talking about Trump's appointment of a special master and the disclosure of 100 documents to that special master. How the documents were stored at Mar-a-Lago is pretty much irrelevant to that. Why can't the special master see them regardless of how they were stored? And they note that it's simply irrelevant. They say, further, the government argues that the injunction, meaning the limitation, prevents the government from even beginning to perform a whole host of activities. Like, well, we just can't do anything now. I guess we're just going to sit here and not do anything. Stupid special master, like pouting children. Well, I guess if we can't look at the 100 documents, I guess we're not going to do any criminal investigation. What do you think about that? Okay. So they're pouting, and they say the government then refutes this contention a few pages later, emphasizing that criminal investigators have already conducted an initial review of the records, and the court allowed other government officials to continue to review them for national security purposes. So what are they doing over there? Are they actually doing anything or not? They said that we can't do anything, and now they're doing all sorts of stuff. Judge Cannon already addressed all of these concerns, saying, I've already authorized what you can and cannot do. And the district court, of course, they say, could not address every conceivable action that the government could take, but that this was created and tailored reasonably to help solve these issues. Trump's defense says, 11th Circuit, come on now. Ultimately, any brief delay to the criminal investigation by the government will not harm them. The injunction does not preclude the government from conducting their criminal investigation, okay? It merely delays the investigation for a short period while a neutral third party reviews the documents in question. The court also directed the special master to expedite the review process to alleviate the government's concerns. So he's moving quickly so that he can address all this stuff for you. And Trump's team finally says that if this court does not allow the special master to review those 100 documents, that both President Trump and the public would be harmed. Trump's defense says that, these prosecutors are arguing that allowing it to use and review the records for criminal investigation purposes would not cause any injury to Trump. If they could take those documents and could continue their criminal investigation, they say Trump would be fine. Trump's lawyers say, well, the government's predetermination that the documents are what the government says they are is sufficient for all involved, including now this court. Setting aside that it is the government's burden to prove President Trump would not be harmed, it's not President Trump's burden to show that he would. Harm would most definitely occur if, one, the special master review were denied, and two, the government would permitted to conduct its criminal inquiry. And they say the district court, the lower level court, Judge Cannon even noted this. She said that even-handed procedure does not demand unquestioning trust in the determinations of the Department of Justice. Okay, just because you're the DOJ doesn't mean that you're without error. Furthermore, while the government argues that requiring disclosure of the classified records to the special master would impose irreparable harm on the government, it has not shown any harm to the public in allowing such a review. And here's that second part of their argument, which is kind of a technical argument. They say this court also lacks jurisdiction to review the special master's authority because the appointment order is not appealable on this basis. And an interlocutory appeal is sort of something that happens in the middle of a case, right? It's basically what we're doing right now. And they're saying that under the rules, the challenging of the order by Judge Cannon is not appealable. They say on September 5th, the district court ordered the appointment of a special master, and all of this happened. And we got the details on that here. And then they cite some law and some case law saying that it's outside the scope. All right, appeals from non-final orders require them to make certain findings in order for it to be appealable. And so very technical stuff, very boring. We'll fast forward through it until we get to the conclusion. They say, for the foregoing reasons now, Christopher Kesey, James Trusty, Trump's defense lawyers say that the 11th Circuit should deny the government's motion for a partial stay pending the appeal and allow the special master to get those 100 documents and complete his investigation before making reports and findings over to Judge Eileen Cannon. Certificate of compliance, all of this submitted along with the certificate of service. Donald Trump's 30-page appeal submitted to the 11th Circuit. is there. Now, there's also another filing that came out from a number of Republican attorney generals. Several Republicans from different states submitted an amicus brief saying that Biden is playing games with the DOJ, saying we have filed all sorts of claims with the Department of Justice and we've gotten stonewalled with them many times. And they're actually supporting Trump's argument, saying that he does need a special master appointed. We can see this filed in the 11th Circuit, an amicus brief in support of Donald Trump. Number of states filing in here. Shout outs to Texas and to Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Louisiana, South Carolina, Utah, and West Virginia, all joining in. Where the heck is Arizona? Not happy. Ken Paxton is, of course, over there out of Texas, and they're submitting this as a friend of the court, as a friend of Donald Trump, to the 11th Circuit, saying, hey, Trump is in the right here. Let's see what they have to summarize for us. They tell us that they're notifying everybody, and it's the same people that we all heard about, including all the states that are now joining as friends of the court, submitted by William Cole, counsel of record. Let's take a look at what this says. We have the cases, the order of authorities. Now we have the Republican attorneys general submitting their amici. They tell us, in response to the Biden administration's unprecedented 9-hour search of former President Trump's private residence and its seizure of more than 10,000 documents, President Trump filed a lawsuit seeking the return of privileged and potentially privileged documents that were taken under the Biden administration's reign. In the light of the extraordinary circumstance of a presidential administration ransacking the home of its one-time and possibly future political rival, President Trump filed a motion to appoint a special master to adjudicate potential claims and to enjoin the Biden administration from using these documents. And after a full round of briefings and 2 hearings, the district court issued a fully reasoned order appointing a special master and enjoining Biden, saying that this was done to at least promote the interest and the appearance of fairness and justice. Throughout this litigation, the Republican attorneys general say the Biden administration has attempted to trade on the reputation of the DOJ and the intelligence community to thwart the appointment of a neutral special master, saying that the DOJ is trying to use its credibility to just presume that we don't need a special master. Unfortunately, we do. They say the district court twice rejected that, and this court should too, talking to the 11th Circuit, saying the states have been frequent litigants against the Biden administration, and we offer this amicus to highlight how this administration's conduct in connection with this case is a piece with the gamesmanship and other questionable conduct that have become the hallmarks of its litigating, policymaking, and public relations efforts. At minimum, the states say this court should view the administration's assertions of good faith, neutrality, and objectivity through jaundiced eyes. Consequently, this court should reject the administration's request to stay the district court's order pending appeal and instead permit this document dispute to proceed before a neutral special master. Amazingly strong claim from these states. Don't for a minute think that the DOJ and the FBI and the so-called intelligence community are acting with good faith. Nope, don't think they're acting with neutrality or objectivity. Look at them through jaundiced eyes, having our livers rotted out through the disgusting toxicity of our federal establishments. The Republicans write, it's well established that men must turn square corners when they deal with the government. But an important corollary to this principle is that the government should turn square corners in dealing with the people. The latter principle is a key assumption and undergirding the presumption of regularity that courts afford government officials, which presumes officials have properly presumed their duties. They say in this case, sui generis, meaning the first of its kind, there is reason to doubt that this presumption of regularity should be afforded to the decisions of the Biden administration in connection with the raid of the personal residence of Donald Trump. The district court recognized as much, meaning Judge Eileen Cannon, knew that this was a problem, which is why she appointed a special master, refusing to, quote, accept the government's conclusions about the contents of the seized documents. And by observing that even-handed procedure does not demand the unquestioning trust in the determination of the DOJ. This approach was particularly necessary here, given the unprecedented nature of the former president's raid, coupled with the swirling allegations of bias and media leaks, and noting that there were leaks and the government even acknowledged them candidly. But in addition to these compelling circumstances, the states say, this administration's questionable conduct in the litigation and policymaking spheres has provoked the ire of several federal judges, and it supports affirming Judge Eileen Cannon's decision to appoint the special master. The states say that take the administration's resort to procedural gamesmanship to overcome adverse decisions. They say in prior cases, the Biden administration appealed judgments just 2 business days and then issued new memoranda hours later, saying that they're just jerking the states around all over the place. The Fifth Circuit rejected the Biden administration's 11th hour ploy, saying that that was totally inappropriate and saying that these tactics disqualify it from certain privileges. They say also consider Biden's collusion with private parties to circumvent administrative rulemaking. Biden stopped defending a host of rules that were put in place by Trump, and then 2 months after taking office, began rapidly dismissing cases. One circuit judge explained that this coordinated settlement was, quote, highly inequitable. And they say that when the Biden people are unable to cast aside unfavorable judicial decisions, they just do whatever they want. They say that a CDC order came out and they reversed all of those before they had to be slapped back down by the Supreme Court. They took a similar approach when talking about mandates. And they're taking a similar approach when they're talking about detention. So they're giving a bunch of references to the Biden administration's what they call the knack for gamesmanship and other questionable conduct they say has not been confined to courtrooms. They have disinformation governance boards, and they're making arguments about the origin of the coronavirus, and they've got clips of a claim here about Vice President Kamala Harris saying on Meet the Press that the border is secure. And so they give us a conclusion. They write, the Biden administration's track record supports the district court's refusal to credit the administration at their word about the contents of the documents it seized in its raid of Trump's residence. Under the extraordinary circumstances of this case, they say the court set aside correctly the presumption of regularity usually afforded to the government. This court should affirm that careful decision. Signed off on by all of these attorneys general from a number of different states, led by, of course, Ken Paxton, Texas, Brent Webster. We've got others, Indiana, Florida, Louisiana, and many of the other states. Certificate of compliance and service attached. And so this read more like a little bit of a campaign memo, maybe, sort of attacking the Biden administration. But there were some interesting legal positions that they are taking at the beginning of this, talking about supporting the underlying opinion from Judge Eileen Cannon, saying that in their experience, the DOJ and the Biden administration has been completely untrustworthy. They've used the DOJ and the FBI and other resources for political gamesmanship, and that warrants a second closer look at what they're actually doing. So that's the Republican Attorney General update, sending in support for Donald Trump. A big question has come up about those security camera videos that Trump had when the raid at Mar-a-Lago was taking place. Many people asking, are we ever going to see that footage? Here is Trump defense lawyer Alina Habba, who is now saying probably not going to happen. She was on with Sean Hannity, and he asked her about that specifically. Are those videos ever going to become public? Here's what she said.
Those videos.
We will always cooperate, Sean. We always have. We always will. Every investigation,
I mean,
as you stated a couple nights ago.
Somebody like me, I'll take them. I'd love to have them. Yeah. Hello. I'm the guy working in the press
You
here.
know what? You know Sean, you'll have me on and I'll talk about them, but I don't know if we'll release them. The truth is, unlike some of these federal agencies, we don't leak. We follow the rules. And I'm actually really proud of the Trump team today. It was a major win. We won on all counts. And I think it's important. It relays faith. And at the end of the day, they delayed it till November 30th. So their plans of messing around with the election, yet again with midterms, got a little screwed up today. Sorry about that.
What about the videos,
You
though?
shouldn't have been so far-reaching.
Is there anything that prohibits you from releasing those videotapes?
Sean wants them bad.
You know why we wouldn't, honestly, Sean? Because the president cares too much about the agents and the enforcement that were just doing their job.
Okay.
And we have been
you
told
can
that
pixel
their
out their
lives have been
faces.
put at risk.
Cover them up.
We can pixel out their faces.
Maybe then. We can, maybe then. You know, this isn't my case.
We do that
if
to
it was,
Greg
Sean,
Jarrett
I'd be right there
occasionally.
with you, but
If he's having a bad hair day, we'll just, pixel it out. But same with me.
Very interesting. And no video apparently coming out from the Trump team. Alina Habba saying, hey, we're going to respect the FBI agents who ransacked Donald Trump's residence. We're not going to make sure that they get in any trouble. Now, Donald Trump is also supporting that. Trump confirming that the video is not going to be released, saying he's got a great relationship with the FBI and we really don't want to do anything to put them in harm's way. They're going to be under the microscope after this whole saga. Last thing Trump wants to do is contribute to any additional hardship.
Yes, we have, and they would rather have me not do it because of the safety of the FBI agents that swarmed the place. And I don't think they wanted to swarm it, if you want to know the truth. I have a great relationship with people in the FBI, but they didn't. We are very precise, and it's not a pretty picture either. It looks like a military coup. It's not a pretty picture. But they didn't want. They wanted to, for the safety of the people that are on the footage. It's very clear, and for the safety of the people that are on the footage, they've asked us not to put it out, but we do have it. Yeah.
The defense attorneys, it sounds like, are advising Donald Trump to not release the footage. Seems like the DOJ has asked them not to do that. Just said, hey, look, you've got the footage. We know you've got it. Can you just not release it? Might be problematic for our agents. Maybe Donald Trump is complying. Said, sure, happy to do that. We're not going to release it. And that may be a useful little show of good faith, little bargaining chip. If you were a criminal defendant, as Donald Trump is very likely to be, one of the things that you do is you sort of often negotiate and communicate with the government, and you don't become adversarial just for the sake of being adversarial. And so Donald Trump, right, if there really is a concern about releasing this footage, he may not want to do that legitimately because it might jeopardize the FBI agents. And you can sort of credit him for that and say, well, it kind of is the more mature thing to do, the more secure thing to do than to just start using these things as points of leverage. By contrast, if you are a defense attorney, one of the things that you're thinking about is what leverage do you have with that material? That surveillance footage very well could show some pretty interesting things, some feats by the FBI agents. They may have been twirling around in Melania's brasiers for all we know. I don't know. But Trump hinting that they are not going to be releasing any of that anytime soon, and doing so for the safety of FBI agents. And so that is the big Donald Trump update, including the latest on the Court of Appeals at the 11th Circuit and Trump's defense lawyers communicating their position on the audio tapes. And we've still got 2 more full segments left, my friends. And so we're going to get into it. We're going to take a look at the border situation because they're trying to prosecute a second top Republican out there. The Biden border catastrophe continues. New numbers released saying that over 2 million people were encountered at the southern border in the United States. And we've got a lot of reaction to Ron DeSantis busing migrants to Martha's Vineyard. Karine Jean-Pierre at the White House was talking all about this, and Trump weighed in using some language from 2016, that campaign where he was talking a lot about immigration in a very recent rally. But the numbers came out from Border Patrol, and they are big. They are a whopper. This is a screenshot directly from their website, and you can see what these numbers look like. it tells us at the bottom, total enforcement actions. And you can see starting with the fiscal year 2017, going up to 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. And in 21, we had 1.9 million. But in fiscal year 22, we've got 2.493 million. 2.4 mil. A lot of people are here in the United States, or let's say encountered in the United States regularly. And you can see that number is going up. During the Trump years, we were sort of averaging under a million. Fiscal year 17, about 500,000, just up a little bit to 600,000 in 2018. Fiscal year 19 had a big surge that year. And then in 2020, it dipped way back down to 600,000. So it more than doubled. It basically tripled fiscal year 21 when Joe Biden took office. And then it is now a massive number, 2.4 encounters, 2.4 million encounters at the border. The numbers being reported by Bill Melugin. Bill Melugin from Fox News is reporting that out of the 2.4 million encounters, that there were 500,000 gotaways, meaning that people that the Border Patrol couldn't capture and sort of process, made it out, made it into the geographic United States. Here's what he said. Breaking, it's official. For the first time, migrant encounters at the border have surpassed 2 million in 1 year. CBP reports that there were 203,598 migrant encounters at the border in August, 1 month, bringing the total to 2.1 million. There is still 1 month left to go. A reminder that these numbers do not include the known gotaways, which DHS sources tell us are already well over 500,000 for the fiscal year 22 so far. We talked about this on our morning walk and talk. Do you believe those numbers? Do you believe what the government tells us? Like, do you believe the inflation numbers? Do you believe anything that they tell us? Not really. And so 500,000, if that's the official number, you got to imagine it's considerably more than that because that's what they saw. What about what they did not see? Massive amounts of numbers. They tell you the good news, not the bad numbers. So you got to imagine it's an order of magnitude greater. Now, when you really zoom in on that number, 500,000 gotaways. We're used to hearing about a lot of big numbers in this country. We just spend billions of dollars, ship it overseas for whatever. So 500,000 sounds pretty small, but we know that in Martha's Vineyard, 50 was like a huge catastrophe, right? Like a big problem. We spent like 4 days on it on this show, meaning we've covered about 2 weeks of this thing. It's going to keep going on. They're going to be prosecuting people for crimes as a result of this. So what does 5,000 look like if we translate that to Martha Vineyards? 500,000 is 10,000 Martha's Vineyards, which is a lot. We heard about all the sadistic manipulation and luring that took place. What's happening at the border is 10,000 of those. It's like a nonstop, endless supply of Martha's Vineyard. I mean, how many Martha's Vineyards is that a day? A lot. If you do the math on that, 500,000 gotaways is the same as 1,000 comfortably, moderately comfortably configured Boeing 747s. If there are 500 seats, and they can get a little bit fuller than that, or you can have a much more comfortable, like 412 seats, little, spacious. But if there are 500 seats, that's 1,000 Boeings landing every year, which is like almost 3 flights a day, full. 3 flights a day, every day. 3 flights a day, every day. One of the biggest stadiums in the United States, Dallas Cowboy Stadium, holds 80,000 people. Can go up to 100,000 people. 6.25 Dallas Cowboy stadiums, equivalent to 500,000 gotaways, or it's like an entire state of Wyoming. The entire state, right? It's a pretty big number. It's pretty serious. In fact, here's what the state populations look like all around America. If you take a look, and you zoom in on this, in fact, let's just go right over to the website. This is the state populations ranked in 2022. And you can see here that we had 500,000 illegal immigrant migrant gotaways. And the state of Wyoming is just about 579,000 people, right? So the entire state of Wyoming, essentially, is now in the United States, according to the U.S. Customs and Border Patrol. And that number is probably much bigger than that. So you have sort of an equivalent population of a good portion of the states. And if you want to look at their 2 million number in terms of the numbers of encounters, well, then you don't get up until we get to about Kansas, meaning that New Mexico, Nebraska, Idaho, West Virginia, Hawaii, New Hampshire, Maine, Rhode Island, Montana, Delaware, South Dakota, North Dakota, Alaska, Vermont, Wyoming. All of those would be smaller than that 2 million number, right? And that's like 1 year. 1 year. And this has been going on my whole life. So you can just take a look and sort of imagine what that does to a country when you have total chaos at the border. Many states are trying to deal with the border crisis. Governor Ron DeSantis is one of them, sent buses of migrants to Martha's Vineyard, now being threatened with criminal prosecution. This sheriff, somebody named Sheriff Salazar, over from Bexar County, Texas, he posted this on the internet. He said, "I have officially opened a criminal investigation against the individuals who lured and transported 48 migrants from the Migrant Resource Center in San Antonio, Texas, over to Martha's Vineyard," saying, if you or someone you know has been impacted, please email us. Over from Sheriff Salazar, who is the sheriff in Bexar County, Texas. And he is saying that this prosecution is warranted. What's his name? Javier Salazar is the Bexar County sheriff. And here he is saying that he's opening a criminal investigation into Ron DeSantis, and he is not happy with the luring of migrants from Texas over to Florida and then over to Martha's Vineyard.
We are opening up a case with an investigation with regard to the suspected activities involving the 48 migrants from Venezuela that, as we understand it at this point, the facts of the case at this point, are that on Wednesday, September 14th, here in Bexar County in the city of San Antonio, our understanding is that a Venezuelan migrant was paid what we would call a bird dog fee to recruit approximately 50 migrants from the area around a migrant resource center on San Pedro here in San Antonio. As we understand it, 48 migrants were lured, I will use the word lured, under false pretenses
for a reason.
Into staying at a hotel for a couple of days. They were taken by airplane. At a certain point, they were shuttled to an airplane where they were flown to Florida and then eventually flown to Martha's Vineyard, again under false pretenses is the information that we have, that they were promised work, they were promised the solution to several of their problems. They were taken to Martha's Vineyard from what we can gather for little more than a photo op, video op, and then they were unceremoniously stranded.
They were taken there so that they could be received by the sanctuary city that said, we welcome all migrants and that we want a diverse community that is representative of people from all over the planet. And when they got there, that wasn't the reality, was it? They were deported with haste. In fact, they used 2.5 National Guards per migrant to get them out of there immediately.
In Martha's Vineyard, what infuriates me the most about this case,
tell us,
is that here we have 48 people that are already on hard times, right? They are here legally in our country at that point. They have every right to be where they are. And I believe that they were preyed upon. Somebody came from out of state, preyed upon these people.
Did he just say they had every right to be where they were?
Here legally in our country at that point. They have every right to be where they are. And I believe that they were preyed upon. Somebody came from out of state, preyed upon these people, lured them with promises of a better life, which is what they were absolutely looking for, with the knowledge that they were going to cling to whatever hope they could be offered for a better life, to just be exploited and hoodwinked into making this trip to Florida and then onward to Martha's Vineyard for what I believe to be nothing more than political posturing to make a point.
Which, again, is the entire point of the Democratic Party. That's all they do, is they treat people like trading cards. Everywhere you look, they just say, oh, I've got, this color and this gender, and I've got this orientation. And they just use people as political pawns and tools. And they don't like it when the other side is fulfilling their wishes, which is to fill, literally, their sanctuary city with the diverse migrants that they want. And so this guy, Salazar, Javier Salazar, why is he getting all so animated about this? He's a sheriff, right? He sees all sorts of horrendous crimes. He sees the real sadistic crimes, supposedly, that he must monitor. So why is he so bent out of shape over this issue? Well, many people have pointed it out, and you probably caught wind of it in the chat. But here is probably why. Go right on over to sheriffsalazar.com. Re-elect Javier Salazar, Sheriff Salazar, police reform. What does police accountability look like? And blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah. Very convenient. Very convenient. Running for office again. And we just scroll all the way down. Sheriff Salazar talking about crime prevention. Give the sheriff time to fix the agency. All right, you got the whole deal. Running for office. And you can just imagine, right there it is, human trafficking. All right, so there it is. It explains the whole saga. So that's why he's out there, ranting from the rooftops. All right, and so that is the promised prosecution of Ron DeSantis. They are now prosecuting two of the top Republican contenders for the next presidential election. Isn't that convenient how that works? Very interesting. Very, very interesting. Now Trump is under the microscope, so is Ron DeSantis. Now, Bill Melugin was also over there, and he was listening to a call with reporters dealing with this Martha Vineyard issue. On a call with reporters just now, says Bill, senior Florida officials said all of the migrants that were flown into Martha's Vineyard were sleeping on the streets at the border in Texas. And they went voluntarily. They were given hotels, they were given showers and more beforehand. They said some migrants chose to stay behind. As for why they were in Texas, Florida officials say that they said that they were identifying migrants who ultimately wanted to go to Florida, and that this flight was a way to reroute them from going there and instead to go to a sanctuary in Martha's Vineyard where they could be better cared for. Which sounds like a much better solution. Okay, Sheriff Salazar in Texas, they weren't getting a real good deal there. They were sleeping on the streets. Why wasn't he outraged about that? Sounds like these individuals put him in hotels, gave him clothes, gave him a nice shower, put him on an airplane, sent him to one of the most beautiful places in the whole country. But he's very upset about that. Or is he? Or does he just want to get reelected? And does he want to probably get a position in the Biden administration's Border Patrol? Who knows? But the prosecution of the Republicans continues. MAGA war onward. We also had, finally, an emergence. Leader McConnell, senator, finally emerges from his slumber. We've been trying to get some insight as to what he thinks about Donald Trump and the raid at Mar-a-Lago. But now we have a report, a video that was assembled by Leader McConnell. This is what he posted on Twitter. He said, Democrats' failed policies have unleashed record-breaking illegal immigration crises. Our southern border is functionally open. It's not fair, it's not compassionate to anybody, and it's not sustainable. And that's a rare sort of appearance. Mitch McConnell's usually slunking out of the media, but he posted that today along with this montage that really hits the point home.
But talk about the numbers. I mean, the numbers really are bad. This isn't just a right-wing talking point.
For the first time ever, the total number of migrant encounters at the U.S.-Mexico border passed 2 million in a single fiscal year.
We have a secure border.
Okay.
It just feels like we're completely overrun and we've lost control of everything.
We agree that the border is secure.
You're getting an average of 400 people a day?
Yes, sir.
A day.
And that's
a lot.
And that's going to be increasing shortly.
That sounds to most folks like a crisis.
Well, look, it's way down now. We've now gotten control.
More than 2 million migrants, breaking the record previously set last year. Most of those encounters, single men and family units.
We're certainly doing a lot more to secure the border.
For the first time, arrests of undocumented immigrants at the southwest border exceeded 2 million in 1 year. That is according to newly released agency data.
And those people that say that we don't have a problem, you come live in Eagle Pass and you'll understand how awful and insecure it feels.
Look, Americans know a train wreck when they see one.
That's right, Mitch.
Our citizens deserve better than this failure, utter failure of leadership. And so do the people Democrats are luring here with a mirage.
All right, so that's leader Mitch McConnell, who, puts that nice music behind his stupid speech on the Senate floor. Americans know a train wreck when they see it. Yeah, it's your entire stinking party, Leader McConnell. You guys have done nothing on immigration my whole life, even though you've been in power many times and you preach every single time it's election season, but nothing ever gets done. So another stupid speech from him. At least he said something, I guess. We'll give him that. The White House, meanwhile, is having to deal with this immigration fallout. Here is Karine Jean-Pierre being asked about the continual border crisis and the governors shipping migrants to different states that don't want them, even though they said they did. Here's what she says.
Folks, but here's the thing, and we have said this many times, we have solutions. We have brought solutions on day one of this administration. The president has been very clear. He put forth a comprehensive immigration bill, piece of legislation, and what we would like to see is Republicans decide to come to the table and help us deal with a really systemic problem that we have seen for decades when it comes to our immigration system, which, by the way, was actually mismanaged and decimated by the last administration.
The last administration, meaning the Trump administration, was responsible for wrecking immigration, and they came in day one with solutions, which is why we now have over 2 million migrants crossing the border in the last year, and the year is not even done. That's Karine Jean-Pierre over at the White House. She followed that one up with this question. NPR reporter asks Karine about plans to solve some of these issues, asking about transparency. Here's what that sounds like.
If the governors were more open about and transparent, would that be more acceptable?
What we are saying is the president has put forward on day one, he put forward a comprehensive immigration reform, ways to deal with what is at stake here.
It's the Republicans' fault.
Ways to deal with a broken immigration system. He put that forward on day one. And what we're asking is for Republicans in Congress to help us come up with a solution, to look at what this president put forward on day one. And they are not doing that. Instead, they're doing political stunts.
Yes. Can somebody bring back Jen Psaki for the love of all that's holy? Lean says, yeah, one of the most useless. K. Bean says, I miss Fire Pants Psaki. I know Zulu's on board for Psaki, but it's not good. No real rhyme or reason, no real answers coming from Karine Jean-Pierre. And it's just now blaming the Republicans. Like, that's the tactic on all of this. Why don't they send Kamala Harris down there to Venezuela? Okay, they sent her down there to Guatemala. Maybe they should send her to Venezuela. Meanwhile, the Biden White House doesn't want to talk about it anymore. This is Gene Sperling, White House advisor to Joe Biden, got asked about the immigration problem that's taking place at the border on Fox News, and he didn't really want to talk about it. He pivots quickly to something else he's much more comfortable with, COVID.
When you look at what's going on out there, you look at the burden on these border states and the reason that they have made some of these decisions to, people have been, by the way, have been flown around on planes to states all over the place for the past 2 years. This is nothing new. But, for the border states, what are you doing for them to help ease the burden of these increased costs? You heard from some of our prior guests talk about the pressure on the Border Patrol. What is happening to help Texas deal with this situation? What are you doing to help them?
Well, first of all, this is still a period where you've had a historic American Rescue Plan that has helped state coffers as much as probably any particular policy, both the amounts of funds and the fact that it's led to greater growth and surge revenue. And finally, let's be honest, this is a problem that has been going on for a long time, the issue of immigration.
So he talks about COVID, right? The American Rescue Plan was to solve COVID. And I guess that's helping us. And then he blames the Republicans, saying that this has been going on forever. They really don't want to talk about this. They just want to kick the can down the road, which is basically what every administration has done with immigration for as long as I've been alive. So what's the difference here? What else can you expect? Donald Trump is also talking about immigration. Trump is using some of the language he used previously from prior campaigns in a recent rally, calling the border an invasion. Here's what he said.
Our country is being invaded. It's an invasion by millions of illegal aliens from all over the planet, and left-wing sickos are pumping toxic anti-American propaganda into the minds of our beautiful youth. They're destroying our youth.
That is true, too.
The choice this November is simple. If you want to continue this national catastrophe, vote for the radical left Democrats. Do it. Go ahead.
That's right. You can if that's what you want. But I don't think that many people do. Trump calling it an invasion. And that's a lot of the same language that people like Carrie Lake use and other individuals who are sort of catching up in the polls and leading in the polls in many places around the country, which leads people to think, is he hearkening back to the 2016 version of Trump rather than the 2020 version of Trump to sort of recapture that beautiful old narrative? Time will tell, but he is out there giving the old rallies, using that very, very aggressive language, and we'll see if that leads to anything. So that is the update on the immigration saga. Thank you for supporting. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking this video. Wherever it is you're watching this all across the fruited plains, we've got one segment left. My friend's calling me. What are you calling me right now for? You know what are you calling me? You silly goose. We're going to take a quick water break lest our mouths become parched and turn into parchment. Cheers. We've got one final segment, and then we're jumping into your questions and comments. And so it is Tuesday, and that means that, normally I've got kind of got a hard stop. So we'll try to pick up the pace here a little bit. But let's get queued up. Representative Jim Jordan now reporting that FBI whistleblowers who were telling all of us about malfeasance within the agency has been suspended because of that reporting. FBI doesn't want anybody talking about their problems there, and they are booting out any people who might reveal it. Here was Representative Jim Jordan on with Tucker Carlson. Tucker asked him about this whistleblower that we've been following for some time here. Remember that Chuck Grassley and others said that people from within the agency were hinting that the administration was focusing hard on homegrown domestic violent extremism and DVEs and HVEs and racial motivated VEs and all sorts of things. And the FBI agents have now contacted people from Congress and told them that this feels like it's being forced, like we are divesting our energies from other topics to focus on political prosecutions of these extremists that don't really exist. Representative Jim Jordan on with Tucker, explaining what he's heard as a member of Congress.
He's a brave guy for coming forward. And I think the way I view it in my mind is, Tucker, they're juicing the numbers and they're cooking the books. And they are so focused on this, they're willing to pull agents from child trafficking cases to foster this narrative that you talked about, that Joe Biden in front of Independence Hall with the red background, clenched fist, talking about half the country being extremists. So remember, we've had
Joe Biden said it. The FBI has to go make it true. He's going to make his policy position clear to America. It wasn't just a ranting old man. That was a policy prescription. America is facing a threat. We have to go find those threats and exterminate them. That's your new directive, FBI. Go do it. And the whistleblowers are communicating that that order has been disseminated.
Previous whistleblowers who came to us and said that they were being pressured to label cases as domestic violent extremism. This whistleblower came forward and talked to us about how they're cooking the books, making the numbers seem that there are cases all over the country, when in fact they're all related to January 6th. And now what's happened today, we learned that this newest whistleblower has been suspended from his job. So there's retaliation going against this guy for coming forward and telling us what's going on.
How dare you leak about what we're doing here at the FBI? Completely inappropriate, and therefore there will be consequences for it. Here's Jim Jordan.
That's why this election in 50 days, Tucker, is so darn important. The way you send the messages, put Republicans in charge, and then what we have to do is get tough. We got to be committed to getting the truth to the American people. We got to be committed to any and every remedy we can come up. Nothing should be off the table when it comes to reining in a political Justice Department, which everyone knows is now the case. I mean, think about the last 6 weeks. Joe Biden raided the home of a former president, took the phone of a sitting member of Congress. The Inspector General at the Justice Department assisted in imaging the phone. He's supposed to be the independent oversight of the Justice Department. And oh, by the way, he also signed legislation which is going to unleash 87,000 IRS agents to come harass we, the taxpayer. That happened in 6 weeks, for goodness sake. So yeah, this election is critical when it comes to America's freedoms, liberties, and the Bill of Rights.
So you have a decision. You can vote one way or the other. Jim Jordan, though, saying that whistleblowers have now come to his attention and they are communicating about the horrendous things taking place within the FBI. Here is Jim Jordan's letter to the FBI Director Wray demanding answers about these whistleblowers. You can see drafted September 19, 2022, coming out of the House of Representatives, out of the Congress of the United States. Going over to FBI Director Christopher Wray at the FBI, it says, "Dear Director Wray, we continue to hear from brave whistleblowers about disturbing conduct at the Federal Bureau of Investigation, including the politicization of the Washington field office. On July 27, 2022, we wrote to you about protected whistleblower disclosures that FBI officials, including an assistant special agent in charge from WFO, were pressuring agents to reclassify cases as domestic violent extremism. That's the DVEs that we've been talking about. And doing so, even if the cases do not meet the criteria for classification." Footnote 1 is a letter from Jim Jordan over to Christopher Wray at the FBI. Since then, new whistleblowers have come forward with concerning information about how the FBI is deliberately manipulating the way the case files related to the January 6 investigations are maintained in order to create a false and misleading narrative that domestic violent extremism is increasing around the country, right? Faking this increase of activity. Jim Jordan calling them out. New whistleblower disclosures indicate that the Washington field office's handling of DVE investigations relating to J6, quote, diverge from established practice in a way that overstates the national DVE threat. One whistleblower has described how cases are ordinarily characterized and labeled by the field office, with leads, quote, cut to other field offices for specific assistance in geographic location. Whistleblower alleged that the FBI has not followed regular procedure with respect to the J6 cases, which should all be officially led by WFO and categorized as WFO cases. Explaining, instead, task force members in D.C. identify, quote, potential subjects and possible locations where these individuals reside. The task force then disseminates information packets with instructions to open full investigations to local field offices around the country. And as such, if a subject lives in Dallas, the Dallas field office is expected to open the case. Although the local field offices, therefore, appear to be running the cases on paper, the WFO is directing the field office special agents to just, quote, open the case in their geographic agent. And the WFO is performing and approving all of the investigative work and the paperwork for the case file. The whistleblower described, quote, that there are active criminal investigations of J6 subjects where I'm listed as the case agent, but I have not done any investigative work. Right? I haven't actually done anything on it. And the whistleblower supervisor has not approved any paperwork within those investigative files. This scheme allows you to continue to support on paper your assertion that the FBI is a field-based law enforcement organization and the vast majority of our investigations should continue to be worked out by our field offices while actually running the investigation from Washington. Okay, see how it all comes together? Saying they have this little scheme out there where they're saying, why don't you open investigations in your local field office? But the way they have the sort of hierarchical structure is that really Washington is governing and running the whole thing. The whistleblower explained how Washington's deviation from established practice misrepresents the DVE threat nationwide. Whistleblower says, the manipulative case file practice creates false and misleading crime statistics. Instead of hundreds of investigations stemming from a single black swan incident at the Capitol, FBI and DOJ officials point to significant increases in DVE and terrorism around the United States. Yeah, because they've got so many field offices opening up so many new claims. In other words, the FBI's case categorization creates the illusion that threats from DVE are present in jurisdictions across the nation, when in reality, they all stem from the same related investigation concerning the actions at the Capitol on January 6th, right? Saying that all of these DVEs, these domestic violent extremists, thank you, K-Bean. Shout out to K-Bean. And have a good night, K-Bean. I think you're leaving. Saying that there is DVEs, domestic violent extremists, all across America, when in reality, that's not, I mean, they were just the J6 defendants who were all there at one incident. These are not new situations. Such an artificial case categorization scheme allows FBI leadership to misleadingly point to, quote, significant increases around the country. These allegations are consistent with disclosures we've received from other whistleblowers that high-ranking FBI officials, including senior officials, are pressing frontline agents to categorize cases as DVE matters to fit political narratives. In addition, Jim Jordan says, the whistleblower disclosed that the FBI is sacrificing its other important federal law enforcement duties to pursue J6 investigations. Whistleblower said, child abuse investigations were no longer an FBI priority and should be referred to local law enforcement agencies. We're just not even that interested in those. Send those to the local cops. Such a posture is not only a dereliction of the FBI's mission to investigate these laws, but it's a grave disservice to the victims of that abuse, and saying that these other crimes are not advancing the FBI's political agenda. Jordan says that the overwhelming majority of frontline FBI special agents are dedicated to America, but we've consistently heard from whistleblowers that there is a rotted culture within the FBI leadership. Contrary to your belief, they say the FBI is not immune to oversight or accountability. And to inform our ongoing investigation, we'd like to know the following, they say. Jim Jordan wants to know all communications and referring communications that were opened on investigations from January 6th should go back over to him. He says, I also want all documents and communications about e-guardians, a preliminary investigation case file. I also want to know about open investigations, potential subjects, and he wants some more details, case identifiers. He wants a spreadsheet. Send me a spreadsheet with a complete accounting of all the DVE cases that you open, including the case identifier, the responsible field office, the date open, the disposition of the matter, the number of arrest and search warrants sworn out by agents from the Washington field office, the number of all FBI agents involved in the J6 investigations. Give me this information no later than October 3rd, and we remind you, says Jim Jordan, that whistleblower disclosures to Congress are protected by law, and we do not tolerate any retaliation against whistleblowers for their disclosure. Well, it sounds like they suspended the guy, so I'm not sure if that counts or not. But that's Jim Jordan, who is sending a letter over to the FBI demanding to know more. And Jim Jordan also wants more. Jim Jordan also wants to see that affidavit from the Trump raid at Mar-a-Lago. Many of us have been wanting to see this for some time because the only thing that we've gotten thus far is a highly redacted document that doesn't really describe what the FBI agents observed as evidence that justified the raid of Trump's residence. Here is Representative Jim Jordan explaining that Congress, with their oversight powers, should probably get their hands on that unredacted affidavit.
You mentioned in your opening statement we could be spending our time on improving our nation's security. Yes, we could, and we have tried to do that for now almost 2 years. We have a border that is no longer a border. We'd love to talk about it. We'd love to talk about the fact that we went from safe streets to record crime in every major urban area and try to figure out how we can help those situations. But you guys won't do it. I think I speak for every Republican member on the Judiciary Committee, probably every Republican member in Congress. We would love to focus on those issues, but you won't do it. You talked about the FBI, and we shouldn't be disparaging the FBI. I agree. The vast, vast, vast majority of the Americans, I think your quote was Americans doing their job at the FBI. I agree with that. They're good people. In fact, we know of 14 of them who've come to our office as whistleblowers and talked about the political nature that overwhelms the Washington field office and the FBI. That's our concern. The FBI lied to the FISA court. The FBI altered evidence to the FISA court. That's not Republicans on the Judiciary Committee saying that. That's Michael Horowitz, the Inspector General. And they did so they could spy on President Trump's campaign. They even had a woman pose as someone else, use the name Azra Turk to bump into one of the people who worked on the Trump campaign. You know what they call that? Spying. They did it.
FBI behind it all.
The Comey memos, he leaked them to get a special. Okay, we can go. I don't want to go through all the history, but it's worth. I think it is worth just pointing to that. That's what happened at the FBI, and now we have this, the issue in front of us. Why this resolution of inquiry is so necessary. Last month, the FBI took the unprecedented step of raiding the home of a former president of the United States.
Insane.
Never happened in American history. And I would point out, not just the former president, but the likely presidential candidate for the Republican Party to run against the very Justice Department the Biden administration had go raid his home.
Little
raid
problem
on the president's
there.
residence represents a shocking escalation of Biden administration's weaponization of law enforcement resources against its political opponents. The American people deserve transparency and accountability, and that's why this ROI is necessary, not some heavily redacted affidavit. We want to know the truth.
The full affidavit, everything that's in there. Congress has oversight. Congress has the ability to say to the FBI, yeah, your budget is going into the toilet. Sorry. They have the right to investigate what their co-equal branches of government are doing, and the FBI has not been very forthcoming about this. In fact, they've been so closed on this that they don't even want a special master appointed to review the documents as a neutral arbiter. And it's a federal judge from the Eastern District of New York. It's not like it's some Trumper that they have a problem with. The government even approved of the special master. So we all want more information, including Congress. And if the Republicans win, if they take over, they may have the power and the wherewithal to demand answers or to defund the FBI or to do something consequential. But we, of course, will have to wait until the elections take place before we see any final outcomes on any of that. But we, of course, will continue to follow it, and I appreciate you subscribing and joining us as we do. That, my friends, is it for us and for all of the various segments on the day. We covered a lot of ground here today. We got into some serious heavy lifting with the Trump appeal. Got about 70 pages of documents under our belt today, 40 from Trump's appeal, another 30 or so from the amicus brief filed by the Republican attorneys general. We got updates on the Custom and Border Patrol numbers, over 2 million, and criminal prosecutions now of both top Republicans, which is just what you'd expect out of an insane country. And lastly, we talked about the FBI being as corrupt as ever and the whistleblowers communicating with Jim Jordan about that corruption. And so we covered just a whole bunch of ground, but now it is time to hear from you. And so I'd like to see what you have to say from our friends over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We're doing a quick refresh over there while I check on a couple of those super chats that came in over from our friends on YouTube. Shout out to K Bean in the house, and also to Teresa Salazar, who sent in that very nice sticker. Shout out to K Bean, says, happy birthday, Joey. We're going to get to that later at the end. My brother Joey, of course, stopped by and we recorded a little video. Teresa Salazar with a nice sticker. Thank you, Teresa, for that very generous sticker that you sent our way. I'm grateful for your support there. And let's see what we've got over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. I am refreshing away, and we've got several pages, and I have to click next on them, and I've got one. First one is here from Vienticus. Vienticus says, Karen's Vineyard. Oh, yeah, Karen's Vineyard with AOC. Yeah, she wasn't crying outside of the beach house down there. Tweak says Karen's Wineyard. Oh, love it. All right. We had another one coming in here from Rye T. Says, would it be worth having a Watching the Watchers uncensored on Locals and Rumble so you can speak about the things YouTube censors don't like us talking about? Not censor your own language and have a bit more of a relaxed atmosphere? Yeah, Rye T. Social Viking says, yeah, it's the only. V says, yeah, it's the only way. Yeah, we're probably going to do that. You know, we've talked about actually even pulling all of this comment section, just pull the whole comment thing off of YouTube. I've actually even considered pulling the entire live show off of YouTube because of the ebbs and flows of the audience, because of the different segments. But I know a lot of people don't want that. But yeah, I'm constantly thinking about it. And as my schedule continues to sort of free up a little bit, I am hopeful to have more, you know, sort of Locals and Rumble exclusive stuff, because you're right. I don't like having to tap dance around all these issues. It's very, very annoying. But shout out to Rye T. Thank you for that. We had a couple others come in here. Let's see. Shade says, the Inside Scoop, there's a Facebook group. There's much more happening on the Martha's Vineyard Facebook group. They're bickering. They're calling each other out. Just posting a couple in there, links to many more. After reading these, it's incredible how their mindsets are, like not really aware of how the internet works. Regular life, immaturity, oddly innocent perceptions, even some of them rise to the cause hilarious. All right, let's see what these ones say. So Twitter had this one. All right, so I'm not gonna put these on the screen, but yeah, let me read them. I'll just read this one here. So this one says, somebody says, find them permanent housing. I'm sorry, but I thought there was a housing shortage here. Somebody else says, do you need anyone to help in the evenings? Where can clothing be given to them? Can we just come out and give them nice clothing? Somebody said, you're funny. Somebody else says, what else do they need? Somebody else says, hey, Pat, they need housing. You have 2 summer rentals. That's what they need. So Pat's like this nice guy. Hey, what do they need? What can I help with? And Tom says to Pat, Tom says, they need housing, and you've got 2 summer rentals right around the corner. So why don't you give them one of your houses? Amazing. Okay, so here's another one. I don't want to put their names on here because I don't know I don't want to share their names. But yeah, they're arguing about this. Very funny. So go check that out over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Somebody says, how can I help? And he says, well, give them your house. You've got extras. Social Viking says, I love this group. You all make my day. Oh, Social. You know, I've explained this before, but there's a very interesting fellow out there. His name is Sachin Patel. And he's a spiritual, interconnected, wise, very wise person. And he said that getting connected with the right community literally will add 8 years to your life. I'm not kidding. And I believe it. Honestly, I really do believe it. I think that having people that you can, communicate with and connect with and think with and win with and lose with, it's all very important. And I'm grateful that you're here, Social Viking. I mean it. I really do think we're building a community, and I mean that. I'm glad you're here with us. We have Don't Be Hatin' says, thoughts on Special Master getting into classification? So I did check the docket on the special master docket, and I didn't see anything there. So I'm not sure what the final conclusion on that is. Don't be hating. But I do know that the special master asked Trump about classification, and Trump responded on classification. But I don't know if there was any follow-up on that. So, yeah, I think that, I mean, from what we have right now, he asked about it. I don't think that Trump has an obligation to prove his declassification, right? I think that the presumption of innocence is maintained, and I hope the judge doesn't require Trump to prove that, but he could, right? Or he could demand it. And of course, Trump wanted the special master, so you sort of say, well, you asked for it, right? TOS Forever says, good evening. We had another one come in. Let's see what this one looks like. From Trollmaster Garvey. Oh my gosh. All right, we'll just do this one. Remember, this one came in from Alex Stein, primetime Alex Stein, number 99, always on the grind. Says that AOC had a big Latina booty. But then we had AOC who said that it was a juicy booty. She said he called her a big juicy booty. And so we had this nice post from Trollmaster who says, we need to shine that big bootyful spotlight. Bootyful, right? Not beautiful. Big bootyful spotlight of justice, but it wouldn't be on AOC's bum. That's for sure. Georgia Peaches says, hey, Rob, nice haircut. Well, thank you, Georgia. I appreciate you. Hopefully you're looking fresh out there as well. Don't Be Hatin' says, this is so urgent but weird. We're all still alive and it's been like 2 years. Miss Lucky says, hey, Rob, I'm wondering where these 100 documents are right now. Are they locked up somewhere? If the government still has them, can they add and subtract records? Doesn't sound very secure to me. Well, that's just like, regular evidence. Yeah, I mean, they go into an evidence locker and they've got evidence, security and logs and check in and check out and all that stuff. But yeah, it is the FBI. So I don't know where they are specifically, but they probably are not in the government's possession. They're probably over with the special master. We have Sergeant Bob says, looks like Senator Benny of the non-select committee gave the FBI folks fishing lessons. Yeah, meaning they're just demanding, they want access to everything. Three Girlies is in the house. Shout out to the youngest girly. Says, wouldn't the argument that Obama's executive order constraining Trump be the same argument that Biden cannot constrain him either? If all presidents are equal and cannot constrain each other, it would seem that Biden saying Trump has no executive privilege isn't possible. Am I missing something? Yeah, so I think it's a matter of first impression, Heather. Honestly, I don't think that there is any answer to it because it's not happened before. So you can see it in both ways, right? You can see, like, who is the holder of the privilege? So, like with attorney-client privilege, right? The client is the holder of the privilege. I can't waive attorney-client privilege on behalf of the client because he's the holder. As a president, or she, because as a president, right, you sort of hold the privilege of executive privilege so that you can conduct the business affairs in your administration with candor without fear that everything is going to be, splayed out in court. So you can have conversations about candid solutions to very difficult problems. And so you would think that that executive privilege would carry on and sort of Trump would be the holder. And so that Biden wouldn't be able to waive that. But, ultimately the Supreme Court's going to have to decide that one. That is certainly outside of all of our pay grades. And I don't think that it makes a lot of logical sense for prior administrations to waive executive privilege, right? It's sort of a benefit of the office. But when you want to take out your political opponents, you break all the norms. Trollmaster says the narrative, it just keeps going and going and going. The trash fire, the dumpster fire just keeps going. Sergeant Bob says, you read my mind. I was just thinking, where is Arizona regarding the Amicus? Then you said it. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Where the heck are they? Get to it. Anime244 says, hey, Rob, love the show. Well, I'm glad you do. Thank you for being here, Anime. Via Poso, Jack Posobiec over on Twitter, great follow, says Special Master Judge, quote, skeptical about Trump team's claims of declassifying documents. Interesting. How would anyone other than the former president even determine that the documents weren't declassified? As far as I understand, there isn't an official process for a president to declassify. Well, there probably is an official process, and it's probably true that there is an official, I would guess, right? I don't know. It's probably true that there is an official process, and it's also probably true that Trump didn't follow that process, okay? But the question remains, does that matter? Or does he have the power to just say verbally, I declassify these documents, and then it's done? Which I think he does, to be honest. And so I think if there's evidence about that, then that's it, right? Because otherwise, because that is the source power. It is the root power. If you divest that root power and give it over to a bureaucrat who fills out the forms, then they hold the power, not Trump. Now, I don't know what the special master means when he says that. Like, again, I don't think he is somebody who is deciding that outcome, honestly. Like, I don't think that's his jurisdiction. He's just a document. He's a spreadsheet guy, essentially. Proving or disproving the category, right? The categorization of that. He's going to make recommendations on that, and we are going to hash that out. But that's ultimately, I think, a litigation issue that we're going to see later on. Sergeant Bob says, bottom line is the videos of the raid would not add to the issues. Special master is the key. All the videos would be used as for media hype. A storm full of sound and fury signifying nothing. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, disclose that if it's useful. Otherwise, why not? Or why do it? FedCure says, huge loss for the government. Big win for Trump. Accolades for the GOP attorneys piling on of the amicus brief supporting Trump. Government is obviously bailing on the puppet masters. Says 2 paths for the government. California and SCOTUS. Courts are not going to let the government blow by the 4th and 5th Amendment. This is playing out before the public who are watching the government lie, one lie right after another. Now that Congress is back from vacation, J6 Unselect Committee announced its spectacular new evidence. It's resuming its hearings. The government, however, isn't ready with its case in chief in the Mar-a-Lago raid. Watch for a delay in the J6 hearings and a TBA. Yeah, we're getting close on that deadline. I thought that old Benny Thompson said it was coming up on the 28th, but that's just over a week away, so haven't seen anything official on new dates. Miss Lucky came in here along with Sergeant Bob, says, don't like Canada's Trudeau, but despite his rhetoric, just trying to get into Canada illegally. Wasn't he singing a song that was embarrassing? Gregory says, people thought that Brandon was eating ice cream. I'm thinking it was actually a pureed terrier. Oh, gosh, that's an awful thought. Ed J says, darn it, Rob. I was really wanting popcorn night watching a raid by the FBI, talking about Trump's surveillance footage. Says Trump has given them too much credit. The people who did this are not agents. They are goons doing dirty work of corrupt politicians. And they knew it at the time. But okay, maybe nice of Trump. It may also be that the video shows some things needed at trial if and when Trump is indicted. The sheriff is going to be removed very quickly. I don't think Bexar County has a real love for illegal immigration. What plan did Biden put forward? Does the fact that whatever it is failed mean that we can just open the border and do nothing else? That tells us all we need to know about Biden, or more likely his handlers and their intentions. Yeah, I think that you're right. According to them, it's the Republicans' fault. You know, they should have stepped up and done something, and that would have allowed the border to be dealt with. They did do something. They did send Kamala down to the border and scream at the Guatemalans. Didn't work that well. Emotional old cat lady is here, says, do you have access to today's hearing transcripts? You know what? I'm not sure that they're going to make those. Are they going to make those available? If the government gives me prima facie evidence that these are not classified documents and you, for whatever reason, decide not to advance any claim of declassification, I'm left with a prima facie case of classified documents. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the end of it. Deary told Trump's lawyers at the hearing. Well, you can't have your cake and eat it when Trustee didn't assert Trump had declassified them. Yeah, no, so I don't have the transcripts and I don't know where that came from. But yeah, that's interesting, right? I mean, he does have the power to do that, I guess. Because that is within the scope of the judge's order. But again, you know, I'm still skeptical about it. I still think that's burden shifting, in my personal opinion. I think the government has to prove well, let's see. I want to see the transcript. He says, If the government gives me evidence that these are classified documents, this is going to be tricky. Yeah, I'm going to have to see if I can find those. Thank you, Emotional. Words Mean Thing says, how in the world were Martha's Vineyard Group here legally? That's a good question. So I don't know what he was saying by that. And I actually played that back, right? Actually, what did he say? They were here legally? So I don't know the details of where they were. Like, were they already being processed by Custom and Border Patrol? And were they, did they have legal status at that moment when they were moved? Or were these people who were just, and they said that they were sleeping on the bottom of a, on the street somewhere. So that doesn't sound like they were processed to me. But former LEO is here, says, should the next of kin of the 51 migrants who died on his watch contact him? It's a lot more than that. So Governor DeSantis saved the lives of 48 migrants by removing them from sleeping on the streets, and says, just shut up and be a law enforcement officer. Former LEO given Sheriff Salazar a nice little talking to. Miss Lucky says that Austin police official is a disgrace to the badge. He attracts that big, beautiful spotlight. Sergeant Bob says, I think I last saw Cocaine Mitch emerging from Groundhog Day. Dr. New says, Sheriff Salazar from San Antonio just committed political suicide in Bexar County. The local Hispanics are just as pissed off as everyone else about the tsunami of illegals, and they want the border sealed as well. They also won't vote for him in the next election. That's coming in from Dr. New. Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see. He's probably gunning for a position in Border Patrol. Sergeant Bob says, note KJP's total reliance on her notebook, minimal eye contact. Miss Lucky and Sergeant Bob say diesel fuel's down to $4.80 here in Arizona, not a relief. Ray KOK says, no, don't bring fire pants back. Get rid of Kareen. We'll all be better off if they put a scarecrow there with a recording of whatever they got to say and they just push play every time they need to answer something. Don't they have AI bots now and stuff like that? Rai T says, a knock on the door, a phone call from a friend. Somebody's popular tonight. I missed yesterday's show. I'm not. That's a very rare night. Nobody ever calls me. For good reason. I missed yesterday's show, but I'm almost caught up. Great to join you all again tonight. Good to see you, Right T. I'll bet you a tenner you're still not using the locals dark mode. You're right. Guilty as charged. All right, let's see if I can let's see what we've got here. Oh no, here, look, here's a 10 spot. Look at that. Dark mode right there. Look, I'm on it because that says disable. Now, the real issue here is that I have a plugin that is probably overriding that. Let's see if I can deal with this one here. See if we could fix this little. Oh, nope, didn't do it. Okay, so I just turned my thing off. And here it still looks like this. Miss Lucky, Sergeant Bob says, methinks whistleblowers have protection. Book J. Edgar Hoover, The Man in the Secrets, gives insight into the history and the culture. Don't embarrass the Bureau, right? Is sort of the running phrase there. JC, the Music Man's in the house, says, I'm pretty sure that the White House spokesperson meant to say, the previous administration messed up our immigration plan. One of Trump's many campaign promises was to fix immigration, did the best he could in spite of the do-nothing Republican majority in Congress. If any president is going to help solve the country's problems, there must be legislation passed. Executive orders can be shredded by the next administration, unlike laws, which can't be so easily undone. Yeah, good comment there. Yeah, but Trump was referring to Obama's orders to even sort of support his claim, saying, look, even Obama said I could do this, so leave me alone. Here's another one from Vientikis. Says, question, am I supposed to believe that Trump's rhetoric is any less divisive than Biden's? Both of them are saying that team bad. Both of them are saying in their own way about people having unacceptable views. I'm supposed to believe they're different how? I'm supposed to believe that one is better than the other? It is complete and utter nonsense. Wake up, people. These people are not your friends. They're both working to pit you against each other, and you can see it every day. But then again, the best place to hide something is always right in someone's face. Vientikis says, sigh, I want some mooncake. Cheers to the mooncake out there. Here's another one from Emotional Old Cat Lady. Says, Boston Civil Rights Group files a federal lawsuit against Ron DeSantis for sending migrants to the Martha's Vineyard. Boston Civil Rights Group on Tuesday filed a federal lawsuit, broke numerous laws. Lawsuit comes a day. Well, I don't know if we want to take a look at that one or not, but maybe we'll dig into it. But thank you for that one. There's going to be a ton of them. I can't even imagine, right? There's probably a whole slew of them. All right, let's see what else we've got. A couple more came in. We've got Vienticus says, did someone say DVE? This was the Waukesha killer, right? Another one from FedCure. Says, Rob, Biden is forced to finish Trump's wall. Intercept ran a timely article on Sunday. Said border construction resumes. Says, haha, they're killing me. Subheadline explained that the Biden administration laid out its plan to rev up war, completing Trump's signature project. You may recall, Biden halted the border wall right after office, January 21, mumbled something about what border crisis. Now, although there's no official announcement, corporate media is completely silent about the massive policy shift. It seems as though an unofficial policy to continue construction is now unexpectedly in force. Intercept reported that last week, U.S. Customs Border Patrol confirmed that work on the wall began under Trump is revving back up under Biden, explaining that starting next month, it's going to happen in the Sonoran Desert in Arizona. They play lawfare and the clock. They lost this one, but not before letting 5 to 7 million illegal migrants into the United States in just 2 years. Governor DeSantis' play on Martha's Vineyard was pure genius. That came in from FedCure. Let's see what else we've got. We have a couple more. Sergeant Bob says, if the FBI agents come to my home, I will not answer those questions. No, you cannot come in without a warrant. And 3, I want a lawyer. P.S. A good friend, retired Portland detective, has the same viewpoint. Those are the 3 rules from the 1, 2, 3 rule. 3 rules for dealing with the police. It's going to get you out of 99% of problems. 1, no, I don't answer those questions. Okay, not all questions, like you got to identify yourself, but anything else, I don't answer those questions. Number 2, can I look in your trunk? Can I look in your glove box? Can I come into your house? Can I look in your purse? Can I look into any of these things? Number 2, no, not without a warrant. Second rule. Number 3, if you're under investigation, if you're being interrogated, if you're under arrest, they ask you any questions. You don't say, I invoke my right to remain silent. Okay, that's second best. The best is I want a lawyer. And you can stomp your feet and you can scream about that. I want a lawyer. Okay, just keep saying it over and over and over until they leave you alone. Those are the 3 rules. 99% of situations get you through. Shout out to Sergeant Bob. This one came in from Paul Mino. Here is, oh my God. This is like a Frankenstein of memes. Look at all these people. I think that's me there with the Trump Frankenstein head in front of the big, beautiful spotlight. Outstanding. Paul Mino, the meme smith, is in the house. Vienticus says, the raid of Mar-a-Lago is really nothing new. The fact that it's a president kind of is. This has been done for years against people who aren't so wealthy or notable. I see what you're saying. Corruption is something that's been going on for years at multiple levels. Just think of the Batmobile incident. The attorney general over the sheriff that used tax dollars to travel halfway around the country to raid an officially licensed DC Batmobile manufacturer. I haven't heard of that one. It's interesting what people put up with. Some call it normalization. I prefer to use the term situational fatigue. What do we as human beings have a knee-jerk reaction like it's something completely new and realistically the same thing? It's the same thing brought to a new level. Yeah, it is. It is. It's a raid on a residence, which happens every day in this country, but it happens to involve the former president. Martin says, I can't help that my comments get a little bit spicy. Martin has a Dennis Leary clip that we'll leave for you to enjoy. Here, FedCure says, remember, the polls are virtually unreliable ever since every single MAGA GOP voter is now a dangerous terrorist insurrectionist. So when polls say a GOP candidate is behind or neck and neck, it's actually a landslide from FedCure. Tricky says that sheriff has so much incentive to open up an investigation, or prompted by the left once they found his woke website. The Veil says, big shout out, happy birthday to your brother. Regarding getting connected to the correct community is correct. It really enhances a person's life. Martha's Vineyard was the perfect place for the migrants because it has housing, food, lots of money, great people. Would have been a great community for supporting the migrants and prove that the Democrats do have an open heart and an open door policy. So why did all of the community of Martha's Vineyard decide to boot them all out? Fear, discrimination? I'm deeply disappointed that they were not able to live up to their own propaganda. Not, says the Veil. Martin says, I don't think we should be laughing at anything. Like AOC literally, yeah, like there's just horror and trauma all over the place. Zach says, if Joe Biden can walk through an auto show on MSN and just decide to say the pandemic ends over and it's over, why can't Trump just exclaim that things are declassified? Rai T says, if a law is enacted that is later found to be unlawful or unconstitutional, are actions which were taken under that law open to prosecution? Same in reverse. If there's a criminal statute and it's unconstitutional, then those crimes that were being prosecuted are typically dismissed. Yeah, so here, you have an example. If a state legalizes cannabis, yeah, so like in Arizona, we just did this in Arizona. It's a great example. Legalize marijuana, guess what happens? Any currently prosecuted criminal marijuana cases, all dismissed. If a state bans cannabis and somebody is prosecuted for holding it, but the law is later overturned, can that person still be in trouble? Yeah, so while the law is valid, they can still be prosecuted. And if the law is overturned, then they can have their conviction very likely reversed in a process that's called post-conviction relief. We had a couple more, and I have to pick up the pace here because I've got another meeting that I'm already late to. Okay, here, the Veil says, big shout out, happy birthday to your brother. Regarding getting connected to the, got that one. Martin says, had that one. Righties, got that one. Oh, look, the pictures are here. This is why I'm so confused. The pictures are here. Hey, replace KJP with the Easter Bunny. Fake president, actual president ruling from the shadows. Yeah, that's true. This one came in from Shades. Legal question on sanctuary cities. Since Martha's Vineyard claims to be one, yet had zero procedures, isn't that a direct misusage of state and federal funds? Wouldn't sanctuary cities be required to show proof of place procedures in order to get money? They had nothing. Seems like there would be no difference in building a hospital. 0 bed, staff, doctors, basically a shell game. How is this remotely legal? Well, I don't know what kind of money they were getting from the feds, Shades. So I guess your point is, right, if they're saying we're a sanctuary city and we're feeding them a bunch of money, then they're not actually a sanctuary. Isn't that misappropriation? And I don't know how much money they were getting or what they were doing. Long one from NY talking about the Presidential Records Act, citing the case law. I suggest everyone read it, and I would suggest you do that too. Former says, I told my wife at the time of anybody from law enforcement shows, if they show up at the front door, don't talk to them. Yeah, and I think that's a good call. It says, at the front door, call 911 with the statement, there are people with guns at my door and don't talk to them. Yeah, that's one way to do it. And so let's do a final refresh over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I think we got all of them on the day, which is amazing. And there were some outstanding comments over there from our friends at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And I'd invite you to come over there and join our community. If you would like to participate and extend your life by 8 years, check out Zach Nichols is over there. We also have Knowledge Tree. I see, oh, they're chatting away, along with Kelly Salnow. Gregory's over there. Vientikis shared a beautiful amethyst. Oh my gosh, that's incredible. That's amazing. Righty is also over there. See the Veil, see Reads in the House, along with many others. We're also over on YouTube. We post daily walk and talks, which is additional content. If you're looking for some additional videos to watch and additional conversation to partake in, click that join button right on the YouTube channel, right next to the subscribe button. You'll get the additional GIFs for Palmy Nose gifting pleasure, including the Binger GIF, the Hunter GIF, and others. I am also, of course, a lawyer over at the R&R Law Group, where we help good people charged with crimes find safety, clarity, and hope, not only in their cases, but beyond that, in their lives. And I would invite you, if you happen to know anybody in the state of Arizona who has been charged with a crime, please send them over to us at 480-787-0394. We love the opportunity to help. We have an amazing team of people who are dedicated to helping preserve the presumption of innocence, maintain the burden of proof, and we're grateful for your referrals to our team. Before we get to JoJo, who's going to help us sign us off for the day, I want to thank all of our mods who helped to mod down the fort for us. Big shout outs over to Vientikis Prime, to K Bean, who I think left early tonight. Shout out to Just Cause, to Lean, Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, Zulu Zeitz in the house, along with Geo, Henry Dixon, and others. I appreciate our Spotlight supporters who support the work that we do with a little bit extra monetary love out there. Big thanks over to Chris Romero, David B3, Dr. EMB in the house, along with John over at QSimple.com. And I appreciate everybody who helps keep the train on the tracks elsewhere. But before we leave, it is my brother Joey's birthday. He is 1 year younger than me. And so today he's turning 36 years old. And over the weekend, he came by and we got to sit down and he got to record a little bit of a message. He's going to educate us all about the Avengers, because the Avengers, of course, very important movie, very important film. And so here, my friends, without any further ado, is my brother, Joey G.
Hello, everybody. This is Joey Goy with talking about Kevin Feige movies. Wait, Mobile Studios. It's called
Marvel Studios. He's looking them up right now on the screen.
Avengers MCU movies in the future. 2022 or 2023. Wait, the Avengers, the symbol, the first one is my favorite MCU I like to watch. And Kevin Feige says he's making future movies like Congo, the secret.
See, he's looking at the screen just like I have to do.
It's coming out. I can't wait to see that's coming. MCU, Disney Plus.
MCU's coming on Disney Plus.
Buddy, because Disney Plus, all the movies I am the biggest fan, and MCU movies is coming. They have new ones coming like Black Panther 2. Can't wait to think that's coming in the theaters by Kevin Feige. Kevin Feige, he's the director of the Marvel Studios movies.
Kevin Feige, I didn't know about Kevin Feige.
I'm doing Wheelie's Days Marvel Studios upcoming future MCU.
Yeah, buddy. And
MCU, the movies, I can't wait to see that's coming.
He can't wait to see the movies that are coming, and now we're going to switch the screen. So now he's going to show us a little bit of the Avengers, which is what he had pulled up on the screen. And so we switched the screen. Here's Joey.
And Secret War, the Avengers. Kevin Feige says, he's making Doctor Strange 3rd. Can't wait, that's coming. Next year, 2023. And I'm a big fan of New York City family vacation, California vacation movies. I have box sets of the 20 movies. And I am a big fan of all the movies I do. I love you guys and Cemetery Translation. I love you. Just lay off of your stuff. All right. That's good.
Done? All done. Buddy boy. Woo! That's a good one.
Thank you.
That's a good. All right. Happy birthday to JoJo. He just, I think he did a better job than we do here. I think he kind of hit that one out of the park there. So that's my brother Joey. And look at all the amazing happy birthdays to Joey. And so happy birthday, Joey. Hopefully you're watching this, my man. You did a great job out there. You did the show better than I did. Listen to all these people in the chat who are saying very nice things, brother. They're saying, happy birthday, Joey. A Lady Picture Show says happy birthday. Wild Exploit saying happy birthday. Chaz, Molly Dolly, Zulu's in the house says happy birthday. Playin' Hooky. Everybody saying happy birthday, Joey. Says amazing job. Says you look like me, that your hairline looks the same, that we have the same forehead. They love your hair. Happy birthday, Joey. Happy birthday. They just love it. So you did an awesome job, JoJo. And thank you for coming by the studio and for joining us on the show. And thank you, my friends, for being so amazing and welcoming to my incredible brother. He had a lot of fun, and you can see what an experience that was for him and for all of us. So thank you for letting me share that with you. Hopefully he's having an amazing birthday, and I'm sure I'll talk to him later tonight. But that, my friends, is it for the show. I want to thank you for being a part of it. Thank you to everybody who submitted the amazing comments, all of the outstanding questions. I always learn a lot, and I enjoy our time together. But we are going to leave it right here, right there, right now, because we're going to be back tomorrow to do it all again. And I need your help so that together we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Have a tremendous evening, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.